welcome to the Warrant Committee's open hearing. I'd just like to remind everybody the purpose of this is to inform town residents about the articles, the background of the articles that are being presented on the warrant for town meeting. We encourage discussion and questions as we go along. We are going to try and go through almost all of the articles on the warrant, and we'll try and keep the length of the meeting as short as possible, but it may run for a while. So with that, we're going to start out of order for on the articles. None of the members of the planning board are in town, apparently, so Jasmine Fernacci, the town planner, has consented to present the planning board articles. She has a long drive to make after she presents, so we're going to let her go out of order.
Do you prefer me here or at the podium? All right, perfect. Okay, so I don't have the article numbers on here yet. I apologize, but I didn't have those when we submitted these. So this article is for acceptance of easements at town meeting. Essentially, there are a number of easements at within the town that were gifted to the community that were never officially accepted at town meeting. And essentially, all this does is currently any easement within the community can be released by a vote of the planning board. And if the easements are accepted by town meeting, then it ensures that a vote of town meeting must be required to extinguish an easement. In addition to that, one of these easements that we are proposing to accept, it's a contingency of the road acceptance that they submit the gift of the easement. So that's a critical component of one of the road acceptance requirements. So this is the first easement.
No, you're going to go through. Go ahead.
Okay. This is the first easement, one of two that we are proposing to accept at town meeting. This is an existing easement. We're not proposing anything new with this. These easements grant access to some of the open wetlands behind it, open space behind it, I apologize. And these access easements are used for hiking, horseback riding, and cross-country skiing. And this has been reviewed by the Open Space Committee as well. They would support putting this to open meeting acceptance. Again, we're not proposing any change of use than how it exists right now. And this is the second easement that we're proposing to accept. This is a requirement of the subdivision for the road acceptance, so it's critical that this be accepted at town meeting if Wilson's Way is ever to be accepted as a town road. That's one of the items that has to be completed. Next slide. Are there any questions on easements? Yes.
And you can just be sure that you know which ones you're talking about.
I don't know. I don't have the article numbers in front of me. I apologize. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. Okay. So this article is accessory dwelling units. It's Article 22. So next slide, please. This is, we did already accept accessory dwelling units, and we did just amend this at last town meeting. However, the AHA, the Affordable Housing Authority, has submitted some additional regulations that were not in place when we submitted the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. And as such, in order to comply with the state guidelines, we have to make some amendments. The amendments include removing any special permit requirement. We can't have any type of restrictive permitting on accessory dwelling units that are allowed by right. And we also have to amend some language as they are allowed to be they are not required to be owner-occupied, as we had written in the bylaw, as well as some of our design requirements need to be amended as well. So these are just clerical amendments to abide by the law. Next slide. So again, this just removes owner-occupied restrictions, unenforceable design guidelines, and we do have to update the schedule of use regulations as well to remove the special permit requirement. Next slide. Thank you. This is for modification to site plan review, Article 23.
Any questions about this one?
Certainly. So as the bylaw exists, we require that the owner of the lot remain resident residing at the lot if they're building an ADU. That's no longer a requirement that we can have in there. The state says that's not lawful. We have to remove that requirement. So we have to do that to abide by state law.
Justine, could you use the microphone to ask your questions?
Correct. You cannot require them to be.
Could you ask your question from the microphone, because we're recording?
Yeah, I'm just confused as to the owner-occupied issue. I didn't think last year when we passed this law at town meeting, there was a requirement that I can't remember because I didn't look all this up like yourself, before this meeting. And my understanding was if you owned a residence in a residential area, you could buy, with a special permit, the old law said you could put an accessory dwelling unit. Fine. What you're now saying is something doesn't have to be owner-occupied. What are we talking about, investments in the primary?
No, we're talking about when somebody builds an ADU, they own a home in Dover. They reside in that home.
Right.
We had a requirement that you have to remain residing on that lot where the main residence and the ADU are being built. We cannot make that a requirement anymore. We have to remove that so that we cannot say that a lot has to be owner-occupied. You can sell
I can
the
be
lot.
an investor living out of town, in other words.
Essentially,
Theoretically, if I
theoretically.
bought a residence in Dover.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at, thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Could you ask a question from the microphone, please?
So an ADU can be either attached to a home, which may be owner-occupied, or can be a separate detached unit. And I had a sense that there was a differentiation between those.
There is not, no. We
No
required
longer.
a special permit for detached ADUs at one point. We cannot require that anymore.
So that,
So
which
there's
is
no
much more
longer-
common in our area where there are carriage houses. So you're saying that things that are detached are not separate from any other units that are ADUs in the town?
No, that you can build an
terms of
attached
requirements.
ADU or a detached ADU. The requirements for zoning will be the same. Any other questions? Okay. Did we skip the floodplain? Okay, sorry. Can we go to the next one? I apologize. No, okay, we need to go back a few. Back. There we go. Okay. So this is Article 20, the floodplain bylaw and map. So the state has issued revised floodplain maps. We do not have copies of those at this time. They should be released this month, and we'll be sharing them with the community. We had to amend the bylaw in two places where we referenced the office of the firm in FIS, as well as some new effective dates. So there's quite literally only two changes we're making to this bylaw just to update it to comply with what's existing now. Any questions? Next slide, please. Okay. And the last one that we have that we are proposing is Article 21. These are administrative revisions and edits that we had discussed with the building department. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. In the use table, we'd like to add a footnote about maximum lot coverage in reference to Chapter 185-17 that will draw attention to the stormwater bylaw. We'd like to add a footnote to the setback schedule of dimensional requirements that makes note about accessory structures requiring half the setback. And we'd also like to add to definitions small family daycare and large family daycare. The way those two are handled by the building department are different depending on what the definition is, and we currently don't have those. So we're not changing anything, we're not amending anything. We would just like to draw attention to some sections in the bylaw that exist that may not be easy to find for residents or contractors that haven't worked in Dover before. And that's it. Next question. The planning board does not have any comments on this at this time. I'm aware that the board has spoken about it, but they have not had an opportunity to discuss this within a planning board hearing, so the board doesn't feel that they are prepared to make any comments on the record about this at this time. And that should be it.
Any additional questions for Jasmine?
Thank you so
Great.
very much. I
Thank you.
greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to the top. So, Michael?
What's that?
All set.
Awesome.
Which one are you going to do first?
What's that?
What are you going to start with?
So I'm going to do operating, and then I'm going to turn over.
Great, okay. So Michael Blanchard, the town administrator, will present the operating budget.
Good evening. As we just said, Michael Blanchard, town administrator. Happy to be here this evening. I apologize. I had to step out. I had like a coughing fit, so bear with me if it comes back. I hope it doesn't. So we started our budget process working with the Warrant Committee and the Board of Selectmen, last year, with a goal of ultimately trying to use our reserve responsibly and working to maintain a moderate and predictable increase in property taxes. To that end, the Warrant Committee sent out guidance in late October, early November, requesting budgets from departments that were largely level service. So in our world, what that means is rolling over all your same services, any cost of living adjustments, contractual increases that are required in order to essentially provide the same level of service. If there are any additional service requests, the Warrant Committee requested that those be very detailed, thoroughly, and justified. If you did, in the back, there were handouts. There's a one with some yellow highlight on different pages. That's draft Article 4. That's what it looks like today. Subject to change between now and town meeting, but that's what it looks like today. So what I thought I would do is just go through and highlight the items that are anything more than just a rollover level service budget. I felt that was a good use of our 8 minutes. Anything else I'm happy to answer questions on, but you can see most of the increases don't fall into that category. They're just pretty standard. So I'll try to go through some of these bullet points. The third one down, we'll start with the Board of Selectmen budget. Although you will see it's a small increase of 1.7% for the salaries, that does include an additional position of a management analyst / communications assistant. As some of you may recall, last year, we cut 2 positions from the budget, a municipal project manager as well as an IT position. We also proposed a new finance director position. However, after working with the Warrant Committee and feedback from this body last year, we pursued a combined position with our treasurer collector. So instead of having a standalone full-time finance director, the intention was to have a combined treasurer collector finance director position. Recruitment everywhere, but particularly for municipal governments and municipal finance, is very difficult. And after several rounds and working with a professional municipal recruiter, we were unable to recruit for that position. I am very excited to say we just started 2 weeks ago a brand new full-time treasurer collector, but it is a straight treasurer collector position. What we did to pivot, working with the selectmen, and I'm very proud to say that we promoted our assistant town administrator to a dual role of assistant town administrator finance director. So again, we still avoided creating that position. However, with that and the cuts of the positions last year, we're really in need of additional staffing help. Not only for our everyday activities, but one of the things we're hearing from many boards and committees is they're looking for additional staff help. And we just don't have that capability to absorb that. So just to give you some example, here, certainly the Warrant Committee does a lot of work this time of year looking for help with the Blue Book, getting things to print, working with our ZBA, our Capital Committee, our Sustainability Committee has reached out from assistance. And so these are things that right now we just cannot offer, and we really do need the bandwidth. I believe a former selectman, rest in peace, Bob Springett, used to say, we don't have a bench. And that is true. We don't have anyone to come up and help us. We just don't have that. And this position will go a long way to doing that. For our treasurer collector, as I just mentioned, we did hire a new treasurer collector, very excited. However, we had budgeted for a relatively low entry-level position or salary there. However, this person came in with over 20 years of municipal experience, so really fortunate for Dover, but it did require a budget increase to capture that additional salary that that sort of expertise demands. And then there's also some other just increases to reflect actuals, increases in some billing expenses, payroll, tax title fees, and things like that. Our law budget's increased, and again, that's really just to reflect actuals. There's been a lot of activity, both related to the community center, 40Bs. We don't see any of that slowing down, so this is an adjustment just to reflect actuals. Last year, we requested a pretty significant transfer into that budget line. You'll see a very large increase right now in information technology. We are very hopeful that's temporary. So, as this body may know, we have long pursued an online permitting system for our various land use and public health departments. Right now, we need to pull a building permit, septic permit, come to planning or conservation or ZBA. It's all paper-based. We are pretty behind. We're one of the few communities that in the entire Commonwealth that operate that way. And we feel it's just really, really important to pursue an online permitting software platform. They are not inexpensive. However, we did pursue a grant with the state, which if fully funded would pay not only for the first year operating costs, but also all implementation costs. It is such an important thing that we are still waiting to hear from on the grant. It could be any day now, sometime during the month of March. But we wanted to include it in the budget because if some reason that grant did not come through, we heard loud and clear from our land use board and committees that still wanted to pursue this opportunity. So there is a very large increase, but we do hope that is temporary and we'll be able to back those costs out. Oh, sorry. Wait a minute. Oh, good, okay. Another increased cost is under elections and registrations. And as you may know, we already anticipate potentially 2, could be up to 4 special town meetings next year, 2 related to the MBTA Communities Act. And so there's additional costs to run those special town meetings, the staff, and the work of the town clerk and that support staff. So there's an additional increase there. Under Conservation Commission, you'll see a significant increase. That's related to 2 things. One is temporary clerical hours to help them get caught up in the office and with some meeting minute backlog. And there's also a request for additional funding for increased land management and trail maintenance as well. So that's built into that budget. For building maintenance, there's some new equipment asked, so that don't fall into a capital level request so it wouldn't go into the capital budget, but some equipment requests, particularly related to the new community center, and then some costs to just reflect actuals that repairs and maintenance are all increasing in cost and to capture that additional increase. The fire department has a few requests. The first is they conducted a study last year and found that we are one of the few towns of our community size that does not have a full-time fire chief. So this budget includes a salary for a full-time fire chief. It also includes additional training. Right now, the department trains 1 time per month. They're looking to up that to 2 times per month. There's an expansion of some on-call pay and also some fire department-specific software that's also being requested as part of this budget. Ambulance, also looking for additional training as well as expansion of some on-call coverage. For DPW, Department of Public Works Highway, they're looking to add a full-time town engineer. It's currently a part-time position, so that full-time salary is offset by that part-time salary. They're also adding some additional required training for their staff that drive the larger trucks requiring CDL licenses, as well as some additional funding to make sure that we're compliant with the Clean Water Act. Public Works road work, they're currently requesting $50,000 in additional paving funding to maintain our roadway conditions. You may recall this request first came last year as a multi-level approach to try to bring what we spend on paving up to an appropriate level. And last year, there was a $50,000 ask. The warrant committee recommended 25. That was approved at town meeting. And the request again is back this year at $50,000. The Board of Health, you'll see an increase, but also the necessary offset within their expenses for a public health nurse. That was a contractual service, and that's coming on as a full-time employee working with the town of Sherborne as well. The Council on Aging is asking for increased hours for the existing staff and also asking for additional hours for an outreach coordinator. We're classifying this as a new ask, but in all fairness to the Council on Aging, their workload has grown. So really, this is trying to keep service level, but we didn't want to mislead the public. So yes, it certainly is new ask, but the intent is it's to help them continue to maintain the services that they're providing today. The need has just grown. And then the library, the increase you're seeing there specifically is that books and periodicals are set to 15% of total municipal appropriation. And that is a requirement for minimum funding by state law, as well as there's some new capital outlay funding for some much needed new office furniture and setup over there at the library as well. So what that all does, and if you're following along on the last page of the handout, you'll see we're at a 2.5% increase in the operating budget. If you may recall, this time in last year's budget, we were at 10%. So relatively speaking, this is selfishly, I think a pretty good number where we're at this point in time. And just wanted to reiterate, we're really committed to not increasing spending without justification. Any of the new asks, we spent quite a lot of time trying to justify, show the numbers, the backup, and working with the warrant committee, the personnel board to justify, particularly where there's new positions. Really appreciate our town staff, department heads, but all staff. They really do a lot with a little. It's a wonderful community, a wonderful place to live, and it really is thanks to those hardworking people every day. And thanks really to our boards and committees. The warrant committee before you, many of you sitting here, you are volunteers, and we couldn't do any of this work without you. So we really do appreciate your help through this process as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's any department-specific questions, some of the department heads or independent boards are here as well that could help address any of those questions.
So questions for Michael about the operating budget? If you have a question, please use the microphone, just identify yourself.
Justine Tam Haven Street. Michael, just a couple of questions. First of all, where are you going to put all these people? You're adding a lot of human beings. They need offices, right? So I'm hoping you're not going to fill up the community center with staff.
No. So we do have an office cubicle available in the Board of Selectmen office space for our proposed new position. The town engineer would reside down at the highway garage. Again, we already have a person filling that role, so that person will move on, retire, and we'll fill it with a full-time position. And then, yes, the new part-time outreach coordinator that's proposed for the Council on Aging would move into the community
They were
center
going to move
with
there
the Council
anyway,
on
so to
Aging.
speak.
Correct.
And I guess the other question has to do with what I heard on, I think it was GBH, when Maura Healy was being interviewed by Browdy, and the state budget is apparently about $60 billion. And I heard her say that approximately $16 billion was allocated originally from the federal government. How is what's going on in Washington impacting our state and grants and also different allocations from the state budget? And shouldn't we be taking, at least in my opinion, a more conservative fiscal role in proposing budgets? So I just wanted to know in general, what happens in Washington does dribble down. Maybe you could comment about that.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate that question. So in terms of direct federal funding, there are some grant opportunities that trickle through at the state level, and those certainly could potentially be at risk, but not within our operating budget itself. I know, and I don't want to speak for the school, and I believe there's a very small portion of their funding that comes from the federal level. So I defer to them in terms of how that gets absorbed, but I don't think it's a significant amount. And then, as we go through this, we work off the latest state budget numbers and proposals. So, certainly that could be on the horizon, but right now, we have not seen any potential cuts to our state aid, which again, doesn't make up a large portion of our budget, but we haven't seen that come to fruition at this point in the budget process.
If no more questions for Michael, then we'll go to capital budget. Barry Goldman is chair of the Capital Budget Committee, is unable to attend tonight, but Robin Hunter, who's chair of the Board of Selectmen. Oh, yep, sorry. Mark, is there anyone with you? Oh, Jesse's here? Thank you. All right, great. Why don't you guys go?
Hello, I'm Mark Healy, and Jesse Hull and I are here tonight to present the Chickering and the Regional School Committee budget overview. This first slide starts with basic assumptions that we can make every year. One is regular school operations. That's the things like the staffing, so that we have teachers in the classroom, administrators for supervision and evaluation, and strategic plan support, and other administrative tasks, and general student supports. Then the second bullet point, compliance with the town's budget guidance. Similar to the library, and a certain amount needs to be devoted towards books and newspapers. Chapter 70 indicates that a certain amount of a town's budget needs to be devoted to its schools, and so our budget is always guided by that guidance as well. Thirdly, we have the district strategy. These are kind of the guideposts in a lot of financial decision-making. They are values that are decided upon within the district and help when we're thinking through whether something is worth the cost. We look at those to say, does this really help our needs? Next slide, please. Perfect. I can do it now. I'll give you a minute to read the detail on this slide. I'll take them one bullet point at a time. Payroll and related benefits. The contract increases of 3% based on agreement are essentially cost of living adjustments, right, COLA, and the 4 to 9% range is because the education contract system isn't negotiated by individuals, it's negotiated as a unit, and within the first 12 years or so you have steps that help increase your salary, and if you go back for additional schooling you can occasionally change lanes as well. So that range of 4 to 9% represents some of the step and lane increases that have occurred above the baseline COLA. Those steps and lanes do kind of have a limit. I've been in the teaching education career, for like 30 years now, and after a while, you just keep doing it for the basic COLA adjustment. So I think it's a good thing from a budgeting standpoint, and by then you're kind of hooked anyway, so it's also a fine thing professionally. The, let's see. Healthcare costs increased 5.4% at the region, so that was, of course, challenging, but that's the same healthcare agreement we have at the for the town of Dover. And continued funding for other post-employment benefits are about $250,000 annual contributions there. So the next large bullet there, the trend budgeting for all other operating accounts. We have a new contract with the bus company starting this, well, we're negotiating a new 3-year contract in FY26. Good news, we'll have paid off the middle school building this coming May, so we don't have any debt costs for FY26. That helps in the overall budget. Student enrollment is pretty level. We had a very slight dip, but 457 Chickering students and 1,080 for the region. So because of the very slight dip, Dover's regional assessment percentage for FY26 is 52.7%, down from 53.18% this year. And lastly, on this slide, I think an important note, the out-of-district placement for students tends to be something we avoid for a few good reasons. One, it benefits students if they can stay in district with their neighbors, and others, it benefits students within the region as well. And it often is a cost benefit. There are exceptions where we simply do not have the structure or supports that are required or necessary for a given student, in which case we have out-of-district placement. But you can see when we can, we aim for those efficiencies. We've gone down from 19 placements this year to 16 expected placements for FY26. This slide just has the operating budget statistics. You can see salary and benefits are approximately 85%. But this budget increase is minimal, just 0.73% over FY25. You see the slight decrease in Dover's assessment too in red. And lastly, when you look at the per pupil estimated spending, $23,083, you can find that data by town online. You can see how we compare with other districts and so on. I've looked into it just out of curiosity. Sometimes there's pieces like economy of scale, like we are a small district. I think we do run a really tight, lean budget, and we provide great services. But if you're curious, you can look into that to your heart's desire. Thank you.
Mark got all the complicated slides. Oh. So this is the a similar slide, but for the Dover, for the elementary school for Chickering. So similarly, we're pretty level. The total proposed operating budget is just under 11.5 million. And then you'll see that our in-district spend went up slightly. Our out-of-district went down slightly. In the effort that Mark was referring to, we're trying to keep as many kids as we can in district. It's better for the kids to be with their peers. And revenues for the state from the Chapter 70 revenues estimated at 1.1, and circuit breaker reimbursement to help offset town costs. I also get the fun slides. Thank you. Thank you to our community groups for our ongoing support. We couldn't do it without you. And then we have an amazing list of groups that really support our schools, parent-led, between the PTO, the Dover PTO, the Positive PTO groups. They're just wonderful. Our schools would not be the same without the investment and support from parent and volunteer groups. So thank you. And of course, thank you to the town of Dover and the residents. I think it's an honor to be on the school board. We have great schools, and we couldn't do it without Dover residents' their support.
Thank you.
Questions on this school operating budget?
Sorry, just a question.
Could you just name and
Erin
address?
McCoy, Farm Street. Of the $2.5 million to the out-of-district cost, out of almost $9 million, I mean, that's like a quarter of our funds. Can you just give me an idea of how many students this accounts for?
Yes.
There was a
Yeah, we had,
There's
let's
a
see.
16?
one more.
Yeah. The lowest bullet point on this slide indicates, so this year that was 19 students, next year 16. And that's actually, yeah. And that's the region.
Yeah, through 22.
Other questions on the school budget? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to the capital budget. Robin, you want to go ahead? Are you going to do this school capital request as well, or is?
I'm going to do capital budgets, all-inclusive
All
with
inclusive.
everything.
All right.
And then if there's a desire for more information on the turf field, Dawn has a presentation that she would be happy to share.
Great.
All right? So I'm Robin Hunter. I'm the Chair of the Board of Selectmen, and I'm the liaison of the Selectmen to Capital Budget. Barry Goldman, our Chair, is unable to be here this evening, and I've decided he probably has something, he may have done that on purpose because everybody else is delivering great news, and I am going to be delivering the capital budget, which is really large. So we will start, I have to do this. So I hope you can all see this. So the bottom line is there are $5.5 million of capital requests this year. What? I do not, but we will put it online. So some of you may be asking, what is this comprised of? So first of all, fire and ambulance is asking for 1.5 million of capital, of which 1.3 million is a new fire truck. The fire truck that the fire department is looking to replace is 35 years old. It has an open cab, it has rust, and it's become more difficult to find parts for it. If anybody in the audience or in the town saw the New York Times article about fire trucks, there is currently a 2 to 3 year wait for fire trucks. There are no parts available, and given the condition of this fire truck, the Board of Fire Engineers and the fire department is looking to replace something which potentially presents safety issues to us. As you all know, Dover has no fire hydrants. Our trucks are tanker trucks. They carry water. It would be we would be in dire straits if we did not have 2 operating fire trucks. The other items in there are an additional $90,000 for the fire truck that was approved at town meeting 2 years ago. Case in point, we placed that order 2 years ago, and we still don't have delivery of the truck. Some emission standards have changed since then, and it requires that we upgrade the emissions, and the fire department is asking for another $90,000 so that the truck can be completed and delivered to the town. Again, that's replacing a fire truck that's approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, 35 years old? The one that's getting replaced, engine 1? 36. Right. So just to put this into perspective, the guidance for useful lives on fire trucks are 10 to 15 years. So I think we're really getting good bang for our buck, and that goes to the fact that we really maintain them well, but we've come to the point where they present a danger to this community and really need to be replaced. The other items, the police department is looking for $190,000. There are 2 patrol vehicles that need to be replaced. They're also completing that upgrade to radios. We are moving from analog to digital. The $33,000 represents the last tranche of radio replacement, and once this is done, all of the radios will be digital. The last item they're requesting is a fingerprint scanner, and if anybody's gone to the police station to get fingerprints, you will know this is very much needed. Our DPW is asking for 2.2 million in capital replacements. The big item is a fuel station. Over by the highway garage, there is a fuel station. To replace that fuel station, the estimated cost is somewhere around 1.5 million. That went through an extensive site plan review with the planning board. Once the planning board approved that, there were conditions to the site plan review. One of the conditions was that this fuel island abide by the groundwater bylaw that we have in town. Preliminary reviews has indicated that we may need to come back to the town to amend that bylaw. Some errors, administrative errors were made. And so if that's the case, we will not be moving forward with the replacement of the fuel island this year. Rather, we will correct the bylaw, administrative issues, and then come back to the town in the following year. This fuel island is replacing a fuel island that has tanks that are 30 years old. Those tanks are no longer under warranty. Our insurance underwriters have said they would continue to cover us in the short term, but in the long term, we really need to replace this fuel island. The other item is a 6-wheel plowed spreader. Again, this is a 25-year-old truck. I believe this truck was in the blizzard of 1978. It's rusted. It's very difficult to find parts for. It's very difficult to get people to repair it. We also have a pickup truck with a plow. That truck is around 10 or 15 years old. And we also need a dump truck with a spreader. Again, we held on to our trucks or our fleet well in excess of the useful life. And unfortunately now we're at the point where these trucks have rust, there's safety issues, it's more difficult for us to find parts for it. And we also have a really hard time finding mechanics who can work on these trucks. So lesson learned from the town of Dover is we have to have a much more strategic replacement cycle, and we were very proud of ourselves for holding on to these trucks for so long, but unfortunately what has happened now is many of them need to get replaced at once. One of the things we've done as a town is we've tried to consolidate all of our departments that utilize tractors and lawnmowers into the DPW. So what that has done is it has allowed us to evaluate the need for different kinds of equipment, and actually it has allowed us to reduce the number of tractors that we have. But what we're doing here is we are going to trade in 2 tractors for a larger tractor, which will allow us to do some maintenance work. And then we also need an additional tractor for the cemetery. Again, I want to emphasize that these aren't frivolous asks. Our equipment is very old. We take really good care of it, but unfortunately, it doesn't last forever. And we've come to a stage where we really need to replace these items. With respect to the selectmen are asking for $618,000. This falls under most of the buildings around here that you utilize. We are asking for an additional $250,000 for the library HVAC system. We need to replace that. 2 years ago, we got a proposal of $1.4 million to upgrade the HVAC system at the library. We are very fortunate that the head of buildings here, Carl Warnick, said that's ridiculous. And he went and he tried working with capital budget to find another solution. The solution was, rather than putting in a really fancy system with controllers, to rather put in two systems, one for the upstairs, one for the downstairs, mini splits, which are more cost-effective, they're easier to maintain, and they're also environmentally a better solution. Unfortunately, when we went out to get final bids on the system, we had estimated the cost to replace it would be $350,000. We're getting quotes that are $250,000 higher. We're trying to bring that down as much as we can, but right now, this is our placeholder for the additional costs that we need. The library elevator needs to be repaired. We can't find parts anymore. We need to upgrade it, bring it up to code. We need a new office in the library, and the library also requires a roof replacement. The last item on here is the Carroll House barn and roof replacement. This was a last-minute request. We have gone back and forth with the Historical Society. We really haven't had time to vet this. The cost reflects cedar shingles, which are very, very expensive, but would maintain the historic character of the building. As of this evening, hot off the press, we were able to find a roofer that can actually repair the roof, which will be a short-term fix and allow us to do more extensive diligence on what the various options may be for us. So most likely, this ask at town meeting will come off. Park and Recs are looking, and this is not just Park and Rec, this will be a van that will be used for Council on Aging as well as Park and Rec. It's a 12-seater van. They're also looking to buy an electric van, and it's really to take people to various activities outside of Dover, like potentially in Needham or Medfield. It will be doing short trips around here, and it will be used by both Council on Aging and Park and Rec. The other item is $75,000 for floor replacements at the Chickering School. This is the final tranche. We've been doing them over the last 3 years, and this will complete the floor replacements. The big item here is a $1.6 million ask. Please note that the $1.6 million represents the entire cost to replace the turf field. Dover's share is around 53.8% based upon our regional agreement. This is not simply replacement of the turf, but it's an upgrade to the stadium field. It includes a new track and an upgrade to the lighting. The upgrade to the lighting would allow for more use, longer, like it could be open later at night. It could be open to citizens to walk around the track. The turf is 13 years old. It seems like yesterday when we put that field in, but it is 13 years old, and it really is in need of repair. The original proposal for this was $2 million. The school committee is using $350,000 of savings that they have at the region to offset that cost to taxpayers. They are opening bids next week, and the hope is that this amount will come in even below what the estimate is. And those are our fiscal year 26 capital requests. So you may be wondering, how are we going to pay for this? So right now, what we have highlighted is we are going to use close to $1 million of free cash. The way our financial models work is we take 1.5% of the tax levy and we use that for capital. That is $570,000. We are going to use $250,000 from prior year capital appropriations that wasn't used. This was the town approved a roll-on, roll-off truck for the highway department. And instead of purchasing the truck, the DPW outsourced that service, so we have a town coming in and hauling away our recyclables. That has worked out to be very cost-effective and worked out well, so they are returning the $250,000, and we're going to use that to offset the capital for this year. And then our capital policy is that all items over $1 million should get bonded, so we plan to bond 2.8 million. And this includes everything on capital. When we go to town meeting, some of the items, such as we'll have an answer on the fuel island, so that may come off, and certainly the Carroll House roof will come off. You know, for us at capital budgets, we are facing another 3 to 4 years of requests ranging from $2 million to $5 million per year. Again, replacing items. And we really we're struggling with how are we going to fund this without having a huge impact on the citizens of Dover. We are really trying to maintain the increase in the tax rate. One of the things we are going to do is we are going to need to increase debt, but as you can see, the impact of the debt is very small on the 2026 budget. It will come into play on the 2027 budget, the 28 budget, and 29 budget, and then come back down. We are working to put together a model to try and be more strategic. Maybe there are ways for us to prioritize some of the capital, push them out a little bit longer so that we can replace some of the debt that's maturing with new debt and not have this spike that we're seeing. So we are working with bonds consultants. We also have been looking at a group that can really help us be more strategic about how we're going to pay for this. And going forward, the strategy of the town is not to get ourselves into the situation again. And so 3 years ago, we set up a capital reserve fund, and once we have replaced all these items, we will be putting into this capital reserve fund amounts each year so that when we need to replace things, we will already have a source of capital to tap into and not always have to come back to taxpayers. And this is a very common approach with professional asset managers. They have what they call a replacement reserve, and they fund that account each year. And when it comes time to replace a roof, they have most of the funds there already. And that's what we are working towards. Unfortunately, we are paying the piper for being extremely frugal, and everything's come due all at once. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Sure.
What a surprise.
Well, I'm also doing this as a former president of the League of Women Voters, because I'm not sure if this does get viewed. Maybe I could ask the Warrant Committee. I have 4 comments, questions. Are you guys still in the process of debating these issues at this point? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is not a given per se. This is just so people understand, okay, I thought that was the answer, and Robin, can you?
Justine, people should understand that one of the purposes of this meeting is to hear feedback from the town before we make any decisions on these warrants. So that way we've taken multiple voices into account before we got to the
Yeah, and I hope people, contact people on the committee if they do have comments. I guess what I hear, some of the things that weren't explicitly talked about, pickleball fields, what's going on with Carroll Community Center, litigation, costs, blah, 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 and, the DPW, the gasoline tanks, final location nearer, one side of the DPW yard or not, or hasn't that been
So
decided yet?
I can answer your questions one at a time.
Yep, sure.
So what was your first question again?
Well, I think the first was the warrant committee has their mind open.
Okay, so you asked about the pickleball courts. They are not on the horizon for capital. And if, some people in the town may be wondering, what about Hale? And I think I would like to say that there was a wonderful resolution to Hale for the town of Dover. Hale was able to raise all of the money themselves privately. They are in the process of putting CRs on the land in Dover, and I think it's a wonderful outcome for Hale, trustees of reservations, and the town of Dover. So that $10 million ask is no longer on the table.
I didn't know that one. And can you just update about the community center
So the-
cost litigation?
So the community center is behind schedule. Right now, the estimate is that it will be completed by the end of May, early June. We still have a significant amount of the contingency fund available to us. We cannot comment on litigation in open meeting. But, rest assured, we are doing everything we can to ensure that the costs are stabilized and that the town is not paying for things that they shouldn't be paying for. I was fortunate enough to be able to go and get a tour of the building. It is spectacular. I think the town is really going to enjoy it. All of my reservations, such as the size of the gym, the size of the kitchen, I don't see how they're going to be an issue at all. The spaces are wonderful, they're bright, they're multi-purpose, and I really hope that it brings this community together, because that space can be used by all ages, and I certainly am looking forward to it opening.
Everyone is wrong. And thank you for all your hard work. I know how much you put into all this effort. The only
And I don't always have good news.
No, I know you don't. The DPW, I wanted to know, did you finally, has that location
So the
been
plan.
resolved? Which end?
So the planning board approved the site, is the site behind the town garage, with a set of conditions. We are working through that set of conditions, so it hasn't come back to the Board of Selectmen yet for our approval.
That's fine, I just wanted.
Right.
And lastly, what is our free cash position now, or are you guys going to be talking about it on the warrant committee before any of this allocation?
So free cash was certified, has it been certified?
Should be this week, we're expecting them to.
Right, but keep in mind that all of that has been earmarked for.
I know you have the different buckets, so to speak.
Right. And we are very, we're using it to offset some of the debt costs to the community. We're using it to fund our OPEB, our retiree pension, so we're using it for liabilities that the town incurred years ago, and it's a way for us to fund it without having to come back to the taxpayers.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions about the capital budget?
I'm like way over my 8 minutes.
Sorry, Tracy Manning, Claybrook Road. That was an excellent presentation, Robin.
You
My
should
que-
identify yourself and where your address.
Sorry?
She did say where she
Tracy Manning, Claybrook Road. Thank you, Robin. I did not know the new fire truck hadn't come in yet. And I thought it had, because I had heard that other towns sometimes borrow our equipment because we have such great equipment. Are we reimbursed for that? I don't know the answer to that. And would that offset the cost of a second new fire truck? Obviously very important to have these, so.
So there, in the fire and police business, there's a thing called mutual aid and ambulance,
excellent. Okay.
where towns provide us with aid when we need it, and
Okay.
we provide them with aid when they need it. To be very honest, we get more aid than what we provide.
Good to know.
And we don't pay for ours, and they don't pay. But, you know,
Excellent.
what's unique about our fire trucks is we have tanker trucks. And I know there was a
Right.
fire in Westwood, a brush fire.
Yes.
That our tanker truck was instrumental in helping them put that out.
Yes, exactly. It's super important, and that's what I was wondering, because I've heard that other towns think we have amazing equipment, so.
I don't know if it's 35 years old.
I know,
It
it's-
works.
Yes, yes. They seem amazed by our equipment, so I think it's a good thing as long as we're helping other people. But I just wanted to know if there was some way we could offset that cost. It's important to have another new one, and I had no idea the other new one wasn't in, so thank you for telling
Right,
us that. Right, thank you.
Any other questions about the capital budget? If not, Michael, are you prepared to talk about the revolving funds? Yeah, great.
Michael Blanchard, again, Town Administrator. So just wanted to touch base, if you have the handout, Article 3 is our annual revolving account. So the town has long-established, pre-existing, what we call revolving funds, excuse me. So these are funds that costs of programs, so like registration fees, things like that, go into a special fund that can then be used and come back out for those same purposes. So we have ones for the Board of Health. I don't have the list in front of me here, actually I do. Board of Health, Building Department, Council on Aging, Library, Recycling Committee. Last year, there were two new ones, one for DPW and one for the new community center. So using that as an example, the community center rental fees, those are things that can go into that fund and then come back out to pay, for example, if someone rents it on a Sunday, they pay for overtime for custodian, the money goes in, money comes back out to pay those costs. So that's number 3. What you'll see is 3 related items, 15, 16, and 17. So for 15, it's amending the existing revolving fund. So the existing revolving fund is for different kinds of inspections and permitting. Those were established when the Board of Health did not have a full-time staff. So they have a health director now, and they don't contract out those services. So there's really no need for them to have that amount of revolving funds, nor the scope of them. They also have, as we mentioned earlier, a new public health nurse, and they're requesting the revolving fund be amended to include public health nursing services because they're able to provide vaccinations, things like that, bill insurance. The insurance can get reimbursement, get deposited into that, and then can go back in to buy more supplies and more vaccines, things like that. So that's number 15 would do those things. It would consolidate their existing revolving funds and add the public health nurse piece. The Cemetery Commission is requesting new revolving fund. There'll be 2 components to that. One is to weekend sorry, let me make sure I can get this right. A weekend and after-hour burials. Right now, they charge for that, so it goes into the general fund, but the cost then comes out of the operating budget. What this would allow is for those costs to go, again, into that revolving fund and then pay for the associated employee hours for weekend and after-hour burials. The second piece, the cemetery is interested in putting in a columbarium. I think I'm saying that right. And they're looking to set up a revolving fund for the maintenance and costs associated with that. So again, fees to for deceased to go into that, and then it could come back out for costs associated. And then 17 is a revolving fund around our stormwater tree mitigation. You may recall last year we adopted a new stormwater bylaw. The selectmen will be looking at adopting, related to that bylaw, regulations later this month. And as part of that, and if I misspeak, Kevin, you can correct me, but part of it is when trees, certain trees in certain areas are being taken down, they have to be replaced. If they cannot be on site or in the area, the alternative is contributions can be made into this mitigation fund. And so again, the money could go into the fund and come back out to pay for other mitigation areas in town. I think that's all.
That's it, great. Questions about the revolving funds? Great. Chief Wright? So Article 19 is a request by the Board of Fire Engineers for funding for a fire department operational assessment. The chief is going to speak to that.
Good evening. What we're requesting the funding for is to take a look at the fire department's operations and see, as you may or may not know, we're an all-call fire department, and things have changed over the years. And so we're looking at how our staffing model, how our practices, how we do business, and to see what's most appropriate for a town the size of Dover and how we can move forward and provide better service to the community. So we'll look at a whole variety of different models based for fire and ambulance services to come to the community. So I don't know if there's any specific questions, but I can kind of read you a quick synopsis of the types of things that we're going to be looking for. So the primary intent and goal of the project is to determine whether existing organizational structure, including levels of staffing, facilities, equipment, and deployment of resources, are adequate to provide a level of service within the Town of Dover Fire Department that is in line with generally accepted standards, benchmarks utilized by comparable fire departments in similar communities, and based on standards and best practices for modern-day fire services. So the article will be a little bit more generic relative to that, but that's the specific information that we're going to look for out of the study. Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Michael or Robin, does one of you want to speak to the Prudent Investor Act? Yeah.
I think this is my last time. So the selectmen have put forward an article to adopt what's called the Prudent Investor Act, or the Prudent Investor Rule. This came about of something that's been on the radar for a while, but specifically the selectmen looked at a finance working group to work with our treasurer collector, who we now have on board full-time, who is in charge of investing the town's funds and trust funds. Specifically, what this would do is allow a broader range of investments. So under Mass General Law, there's what's called the legal list of investments. It's fairly limited. It's not updated very frequently. I don't know if this is accurate, but just for example, like before I came up, I Googled the state website's list, it last being updated in 2019. So it's something that isn't updated very frequently. And what this would do is allow us, much like a bank, to allow more diversification of our investments, lower our investment risk, and allow more flexibility on our investments in return. So it's fairly common that this be adopted at a local level. I believe, and I may have been speaking previously, it required something being adopted at the state level. It's now a local acceptance, so the town meeting can accept it, and then we can implement that at the local level. So it gives us more flexibility while still keeping our money safe.
Great. Questions for Michael? Good. Mr. Long? We have two articles from the Board of Assessors.
I'm Charlie Long, the chairman of the Board of Assessors, and this relates to exemptions partial exemptions from property taxes for disabled veterans. These exemptions are pretty modest to start with, but these two articles provide that they'll be adjusted for inflation as time goes on. That's all that's involved. The cost of the town is basically pretty negligible.
Questions for Mr. Long? Great. We have two citizens petitions to discuss. One citizens petition, the sponsors of one citizens petition have asked the Warrant Committee to recommend that it be withdrawn. First, Article 28 is Mr. Here, amending the schedule of use table.
Good evening. My name's Tom here. I live at 15 Park Avenue. And let's see. Since moving to Dover in 1999, my wife and I have undertaken a number of improvement projects on our property that required building permits, projects big and small. The process was relatively straightforward and well handled and managed by the building department. Late last year, we applied for another building permit, and we're surprised to learn that the planning board is now involved in terms of a preliminary site plan review requirement that for accessory buildings in all zoning districts, including residential districts, as a prerequisite to starting the building permit application process. A clear departure from my previous experiences. So in learning that, I looked into what's the planning board do and what their responsibilities are, and come to find out that they vary from town to town and not definitively delineated by the state. Most towns establish, as we have planning boards, to do a lot of things, including evaluate the impacts of new buildings and developments, subdivisions, sort of town planning, focusing on public health and safety, traffic, parking, drainage, lighting, things like that. Planning board really doesn't and can't enforce or waive zoning bylaws, so a planning board approval does not approve a zoning violation, right? That happens separately at the building department, ultimately, if necessary, the zoning board of appeals. They also don't have the authority over safe drinking or wastewater. That's the health department. Stormwater runoff we talked about already, and wetlands protection are all covered by existing departments. So the objective of my article is relatively simple: to remove the planning board's site plan review requirement as it pertains to accessory uses, buildings such as pools, pool houses, cabanas, detached garages, barns, stables, in residential zoning districts only. So let's look at the current state of requirement, the current state of our bylaws relative to planning board's purview. As makes sense, they're involved in site plan review for commercial buildings and subdivisions, municipal buildings, really makes anywhere there's parking or a lot of public access, traffic issues, cemeteries, churches, all this makes a lot of sense. Schools absolutely makes sense, right, that they're involved with the very high exposure to public safety, traffic, and such, and not-for-profit clubs. So contrast that with planning board's involvement in just a single-dwelling family, a new single-family dwelling, and construction of additions to an existing home, where there's no involvement whatsoever of the planning board in any way. So the question is, if their focus is more the commercial public spaces, safety, those kinds of things, and they're not involved at all in any way in residential dwellings, what do we do with things that are accessory buildings? Right, the pools, the cabanas, detached garages, barns, and stables, and such. An attached garage, for example, requires no planning board site review because it's attached to the dwelling, while a detached garage does. To me, that didn't make a lot of sense, and looking around a little further afield, Dover seems to be a bit of an anomaly in that requirement here compared to our neighboring towns' bylaws, again, for accessory buildings in residential zones. So why the change? I got through the process. It was not that easy, surprisingly delayed my project quite a bit. So there's a minimum of 30 days that it's going to extend your project, often longer than that because you have to submit the application and wait for the next meeting, and then the approval comes after that. I don't think we covered it, but I think there's another article from the planning board where they're asking to extend that to 60 days. I don't know if we skipped that or I missed it, or it's been withdrawn, but that's whatever. That would just exacerbate the problem. I think planning board is asking for 60 days in terms of projects that are complex, right? We really need more time to do due diligence, get out there and look at things. But those 60 days would exacerbate the 30 that's already delaying. In terms of costs, right? This costs the town, the planning department employees are doing work. They're notifying abutters, neighbors. They're sending certified mails. It also costs the applicant another $500 on top of, in my example, $1,150 for a theoretical $100,000 project. So not insignificant. And ultimately, it's a duplication of effort. It's a redundancy. Feels like we're doing the same work twice. And I think we should let our trained town, professional town employees do their jobs and not be second-guessing them. And finally, I think back to the 60 days, it looks to me, or it feels, that the volume of site plan reviews is overburdening the planning board meeting agendas, and it's just taking time away from the more important projects, the complex issues really deserving of their attention, right, where we want them working on to the benefit of the town. So Dover's always prided itself on having a comparatively low tax rate for this area. We have the enviable reputation of being frugal and efficient. Our fire trucks are 35 years old, right? We make them last. We spend money where it makes the most sense, the schools, the roads, public safety. All those things make a lot of sense. Site plan reviews, in my opinion, and again, focus on residential outbuildings, waste taxpayer and town resources, cause undue delays in the already robust building permitting process. So I hope you can see the value of this relatively minor but impactful bylaw change. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that you might have.
Questions for Mr. Here?
Thank you.
Yep.
Jonathan Fryer, Haven Street. Are there any other towns around that do this, that have this requirement?
As I said, the planning board's activities vary by town. We looked at the surrounding towns, Sherburne, Wellesley, Medfield, Westwood, and then Weston, which is a little further afield, but feels similar. And they generally require no site plan review for these accessory structures in residential zoning districts. Weston has a little bit of a wrinkle in there that they have scenic roads, where a scenic road would require planning board input and review, which kind of makes sense, right? That they're trying to manage the town appearance and development, which we have some scenic roads, but generally not really.
Because I'm an attorney, as some of you may know, and I deal with our zoning bylaws all the time, and in all the towns around, and there is not a town around that I've ever worked in that regulates the pool house, the garden shed, and I think this is just, it's an anomaly, and I don't think it was ever really the intention of our zoning to regulate that. The site plan review in every other town I've ever worked in is for commercial municipal structures, not for residential. And even if you look at our bylaw, it says that it doesn't apply to residential structures. But then we have a qualification, we have accessory structures. They're still residential. There's no reason that I can see that we should be duplicating this effort and making my clients and other citizens pay extra, go through all this, when we have a very efficient and competent zoning inspector, board of health, town engineer. It's just a huge waste of everybody's time, including the planning boards and the planning coordinator and their staff. They waste huge amount of time on these applications that just don't produce any value for the applicant or the town. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Jonathan, I probably disagree with John on this one again. There are a couple of projects that are very, when you say residential, that more and more buildings that are occurring in our town are looking less residential and more commercial, even though they're in residential areas. And I think most people know the large horse stable that's going up on Dedham Street, which went through a full site plan review, and there were modifications made. In our neighborhood, although you and I haven't met, we had a owner who doesn't live on Haven Street, lives in Dover, but doesn't live on Haven Street, lives next to Jonathan, by the way, who rents out a small house for money. He doesn't live there, the owner, and he's now proposing to build what I'm calling a mega garage. And I think from the neighbor's point of view, we appreciated the initial attempt by the planning board to try to get to noise issues, working on cars. This mega garage will hold somewhere between 7 and 12 cars, to be decided. It's not a normal, quote-unquote, 2 or 3 car garage. So I think the argument in favor of site plan review is just that kind of thing. I don't know about swimming pools and all that. All my experience has only been with this mega garage, that people were very concerned, or still concerned, about the size, the hours of operation, et cetera. So that's an argument for retaining the site plan review process and not taking the planning board out of the process. But they're not here tonight to talk about it. So therefore, I had to get up yet again. Okay, I'll be quiet.
All right, thank you.
John wants to talk?
Just a quick question. So Chris Kowalczyk, 22 Francis. I'm curious of, you've obviously gone through this. I'm curious, if you got approval, number one, and then, how frequently does this happen? And of the ones that were submitted, how often does the planning board come back and either reject it or amend it? What's the magnitude of this?
Yeah, I can only speak to my own experience. I've participated this either directly on my own project or indirectly, including the 4-car garage. It's a 4-car garage.
We've never met
and it took me, it was probably 3 months for me to get the approval from the planning board, ultimately at the end realizing that they didn't really have standing to not approve it. And I think that leads to the public gets invited, get notified, and the neighbors show up, and they're given the impression that they have a voice, things to offer to the conversation, where ultimately the planning board has to say, well, that's great, but we can't, that's not in our purview to decide upon. So it ends up initially feeling like they're providing transparency, when ultimately they're providing disappointment and frustration to everyone involved, whether it's the applicant, the neighbors, and the planning board themselves. So my experience has been categorically frustrating. I met with Carol one-on-one, my wife and I, so it wasn't one-on-one, and she said, you guys are an anomaly, right? This never happens. These site plan reviews go through like butter. And I wish that was the case. So it took me 2 months of meetings to get approval, only to find out that there was really no basis for them to have asked for a continuance the first time. So I question the value of that step in the process when we know that the town departments, the professionals that we've hired, that we should be trusting, that know this better, that they're doing their jobs. Did I answer your question? Okay.
All right, the Article 30 is a citizen's petition proposed by Rick Aaron, seeking funds for a design of a sidewalk from Chickering School to Center Street, on Cross Street.
Hi, I'm Rick Guerin. I live at 28 Valley Road, and I've been working in the town of Dover as an educator for the last 15 years. My wife and I own Precious Beginnings Preschool. She's been serving the youngest residents of Dover for 26 years. So we care about children. Let's go on to the next, let's see. see if I got it. There we go. Okay, this is the warrant article itself. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to design a walkway to join the existing Center Street sidewalk to the Chickering Elementary School. That Center Street sidewalk's been there quite a while now, and I'm kind of surprised we didn't just go ahead and bring it to the elementary school, but I don't know when the Center Street sidewalk was built, nor I think the elementary school's been there for over 20 years. But I think we have a responsibility to support the infrastructure around the school. Let's go to the next slide. Why do we need a sidewalk? Safety. The children and adults walk in this small stretch of roads, sometimes two abreast during peak traffic times, which are at least 10 times during the week. That's the start and stop times of Chickering. Eliminate safety issues involving pedestrians during weekday mornings, afternoons, while elementary traffic, buses, teaching staff, and parents are arriving and departing. There's been an increase in traffic at Chickering Elementary School since September 2020, when the earlier start times were implemented. And I'm somebody who's pretty familiar with that because I wasn't crazy about the start time change, but it seemed to work out, so I'm okay with it. But children get 25 to 30 more minutes of sleep time if dropped off instead of waiting or traveling on the bus. I have firsthand experience. My wife and I are raising our now 11-year-old grandson who's in 5th grade at Chickering Elementary, so I've got a lot of familiarity with this particular issue. I know it inside out and backwards because I drive there all the time. Let's see, next slide. Access, danger. The existing width of Cross Street narrows to 18 feet 8 inches between Chickering Elementary and Center Street, preventing two-way traffic when a pedestrian is present. If you encounter a pedestrian, the law requires you to pass only when you can safely provide 4 feet of space between them and your vehicle, which is an impossibility. I actually used town equipment to measure the width of the road. There is no dedicated walkway for safe passage. Pedestrians are at risk of being struck by motor vehicles, causing dangerous conditions while sharing the roadway. I know that for a fact because I see it every day. Not often, but it does happen. A few weeks ago, I saw a woman walking down the street at the time of drop-off, and she was standing on the ice bank, and her foot kept sliding in the road, and I kept thinking, oh, how's this going to work out? There's not much room, especially when there's snow there. Now, this is the narrow road itself. You can actually see it. There's a bus right there. There's a car, and you can see there's no way we can provide that 4 feet of space to a pedestrian. It's impossible. So that's a visual representation. Landscape vehicles in the roadway make it more challenging navigating the roadway spring and fall months. Those who have driven that road know what I'm talking about. Sometimes those landscape vehicles park on Chickering property. Children are often seen walking in this narrow stretch of Cross Street on Chickering half-days, which I witnessed the past couple weeks on Wednesdays. This is the law I'm talking about. This is the vulnerable road user law that was passed in April of 2023. It requires people to go over the yellow line to oncoming traffic if they encounter a pedestrian to provide a safe passing distance as deemed by the state. Since late 2023, the Registry of Motor Vehicles include information on the VRU law for new and re-registrations. That's with the Jiffy Lube coupons and organ donor flyers you get as well. The VRU signs in other towns, as you can see, this is one from Medfield. I think it's on Pine Street. Everybody thinks it might be for bicycles only. You don't have to protect pedestrians, but you do. Here's the cost proposal funding. The town owns 40 feet of width on Cross Street. Existing marked travel width, the lines allocated for both lanes is generally around 19 feet, and it's 20 feet in some areas. So the town owns land there, at least close to 20 feet to work with. LAL Engineering Group out of Millis for survey and engineering. The cost that's up here is includes 30% for contingencies. When I got this estimate, it was about $16,000, and the engineering group recommended 15% for contingencies. And when I brought this to Kevin McCabe, he said add another 15%. So this shows a 30% for contingencies for the survey and engineering of this particular project. Possible funding: municipalities have received funds for sidewalk projects for schools from both federal and state sources. These are the two sources that I'll cover a little bit more about those in a minute. And the frequently asked questions: why do pedestrians choose to walk on the western side of Cross Street, which is the Chickering Elementary side. Their destination is the main sidewalk on the south side of Center Street. Will this require a crosswalk or traffic lights on Center Street? No. This request is only to address safety issues with this section of Cross Street. That's just exclusive between Chickering property and Center Street sidewalk. Many roads in Dover have narrow width. Why should this be at the top of the list for a sidewalk? It's an actively traveled area for such a short distance for school traffic. You can predict that 10 times during the week, encounters between vehicles and pedestrians may occur based on start and stop time of Chickering Elementary. I am no wizard, but I can tell you that's when traffic is going to be present, when school starts or when school stops. Why do we do this now? We haven't had any issues up to now. 3 key reasons: safety for all. 2, increased traffic since September of 2020. 3, the VRU law passed in April of 2023 requiring 4 feet of space. We have people who've witnessed close calls, pedestrians on snowbanks, runners, dog walkers in the road, while buses, cars are trying to navigate around each other, and sometimes landscaper vehicles, etc. Not everybody has that, has the view I have, but one of our members of the Warrant Committee had a chance to place I work at, which is Precious Beginnings Preschool. From 15 Center Street, you can actually see right down the pipeline of that road, and it takes people to go between Chickering property and the Center Street sidewalk about 2 to 3 minutes on a walk, and I see people there all the time. It's not just children that walk there, but it's also adults that take the time to walk that loop. It's something I think we need to do. It's in a law that's been on the books. We're becoming more knowledgeable, and me, who knows the law, I feel very uncomfortable about when I see a walker walking on the road, and technically I feel uncomfortable trying to pass them because there's no way I can give them 4 feet. I don't think this is, I think this is a safety issue, and I think it's shame on us if we don't take the time to really think about providing a safe walkway for our children. Because last Wednesday I saw some of our alumni walking in the road, and it's just troubling to me that we can't have a sidewalk from the elementary school to Center Street. We should have probably addressed this a long time ago. I'm ready for any questions.
Great. Questions from Mr. Garin?
Hi, John Nichols, Cross Street. Appreciate you bringing the petition. So my wife and 2 kids and I live on Cross Street, right across from the school. So we see every day how dangerous it is. We've had close calls ourselves, walking our kids to school. So as I said, really appreciate you bringing this. I don't have any empirical evidence, but I think we're one of the few towns around that has a major roadway leading to an elementary school without a sidewalk. And I just kind of blows my mind some days why that's the case. I guess the reason I want to speak up is, well, I think it's a good idea, and I appreciate the study and the petition. I do think this needs to be a little bit more holistic. In particular, while I strongly support the sidewalk, I really think we need to look at least at extending it further down Cross Street. It would be ideal if we could go the entire length of the school, connecting to the second entrance to Chickering, which actually has a sidewalk about halfway up the driveway, and then would connect to Carroll Park on the other side. So, and even further down Cross Street, there are a lot of young families in the neighborhood, and I think every day we see more and more moving into that neighborhood. So just want to think a little more holistically about how we can make it safer for everyone to walk on Cross Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my hope is at least to start with this. Something beats nothing, as long as the kids are safe.
Mike Savage, Circle Drive. I think I remember this warrant article or one similar to it a couple of years ago, which was submitted. And I struggled with it then because of the business you have that's right across the street from Cross Street. And it seems to me that, and I'm all for increased safety for our kids in town, certainly. And I could see the point of having a sidewalk on Cross Street that would connect to the rest of it. However, your business being where it is, it seems to me I'm worried that this might be a first step in trying to get a crosswalk or a light or something like that installed on Center Street. Can you say something?
Yeah, I'm happy to say that. I can say that my grandson started at Chickering Elementary in 2019, and that's what alerted me to this. Us getting any kind of business from Chickering Elementary is absolutely, they already have an afternoon program, so it's not something that we can provide for that age group. So it's not it's not advantageous for us as a business to seek a crosswalk or to seek anything that would increase the revenues for Precious Beginnings Preschool. I've been staring that intersection for the last 15 years, and I've seen far too many close calls. So this isn't a business decision. This is a heartfelt, I'm concerned about the children's safety. I made a decision 15 years ago to leave the engineering field. I left Cisco Systems. I had a great career with them at age 50, and I decided to join my wife to educate children, part of my vocation, basically. So if we were about the money, we'd have a daycare. This is not a daycare, it's a preschool. We don't chase the money. We're here to educate young minds, and we want to lead by example through being thoughtful. And part of that is taking care of them and making sure that they're safe on the roadways of Dover.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Ami Tajani, 41 Claybrook Road. I walked once to bring my kids home from Chickering when they were in elementary school, and I decided then I would never do it again because, you know, Claybrook, Center Street, Cross Street, I thought Claybrook and Center would be the more dangerous sections. It was really Cross Street. While the traffic is going both ways, like Rick is saying, there was no room to walk. And I would never let my kids do it by themselves without me. So I support having sidewalks. However, I do wonder if this is the most effective way to get it. So 3 years in a row of going to town meeting with this article. With the rail trail in the works, you know, there's talk of the village center. I heard a lot about the village center in the last couple of years, haven't heard about it more recently. I do wonder, like the other gentleman was saying, is if it would be more effective if we had a more holistic look at this. So I know that with the rail trail, they're talking a lot about accessibility and how to connect the schools, the regional school, Chickering. Like, could it be part of a larger plan instead of the same article again at town meeting?
Okay, well, the first year I didn't get a chance to present because I didn't have the PowerPoint set up, and I wasn't prepared for any of this. It was a very difficult time for me. My best friend actually passed away from cancer that when I was trying to get ready for that first time I did this. The second time, I don't think I was given enough information by the Warrant Committee as far as cost, that would be the issue. So what I'd like to do is, in regards to the holistic approach, I've talked to walkers on that road several times, and they basically said to me, this is the last piece that we need to do the loop around Dedham Street, through Chickering Fields, through Chickering property, and then if we could get that sidewalk to Center Street. There are some people who are senior citizens actually park over at Carroll Park to do a loop, and this is one about 600 or so feet in front of 7 and 11 Cross Street that there's no protection from. So from a holistic approach, I have talked to walkers on the road, and they said, if we could only get that, we can go from Dedham Street through Chickering Fields. We just need that last piece. And I'm just thinking about the children who walk in these streets, and these last couple Wednesdays have been warm days, half day. The kids want to walk down there, and as Robin pointed out, hopefully we'll have a Carroll Community Center in a couple of months, and I can see children at some point, maybe in the fall, want to walk there. I know they walk to the library now. Some walk to
We have a couple more questions, I think.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hi, Steve Lanzicki, 11 Cross Street. So I was just looking back at this meeting, 2023. There was some pushback as well and questions about the proposal. You said if the town doesn't want this, then I'm okay with that, because you had made other efforts to transport
Back
kids
then I was
from
okay with it,
Chickering
yep.
to your preschool. So 2023, 81% of the town said no. Last year, 86% said no. Are we going to just do this every year? Is that kind of the path?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about cost, right? Okay. So I was told last year it was because of cost. Think about this. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Can I respond to your question?
Cost, lack of town support, existing sidewalk to town center, safety concern at Cross and Center Street.
Right,
There's a list of issues. that
Which
have
is
been-
fine with me. I mean, everybody has their issues. Nobody wants to change anything. It was fine to give a foot or 2 feet to a pedestrian prior to 2023. But we're all reminded about this new law. And there have been close calls. Just because nobody's been hurt, let's put it in this term. If somebody gets hurt, okay, because we're not providing the ample space, or a parent is panicked because they can't give the 4 feet of space to the pedestrian, and a child is hurt, what's that going to cost the town? Think about that. What's it going to cost the town? If I'm an attorney and I'm representing a client, I can tell you the cost to even put that sidewalk in is going to be a lot more expensive. I mean, it's not going to cost the town as much as it would if there's a lawsuit and it's negligence. So I'm just saying the VRU law. Now, regardless of what residents want or don't want, it's a VRU, it's a law. I'm talking to the police chief later on this week. If I could come up with a new solution that they might have, great.
Another question?
I have a comment. I'm Peter King, 14 Cross Street. My wife and I have lived here well over 40 years. We raised our 2 daughters who went to Chickering and DS, and they took the bus, even though school was right across our street, our house. Having lived here so many decades, I see very, very few children walking to school. They're usually dropped off by their parents or take the bus. I have never felt that there was a major risk of a pedestrian accident or even a car accident. I run on Cross Street several times a week, even during winter dark and even over ice and snow. I have never once felt unsafe on Cross Street. The people are very polite and courteous when there are buses, and I run during school drop-off time, 7 in the morning. When there are people, when there are lots of traffic and buses are crowding the street, people stop and wait. You don't try to squeeze by possible pedestrians. I have never felt once unsafe on the roads on Cross Street. The petitioner has not provided any data supporting near misses, accidents, and so on. I did a quick search online. Since the year 2000, there has been 2 accidents involving Dover-Sherburne school bus. One occurred in Sherburne when a driver had a medical emergency. And another time, a car coming out of White Street struck a bus on Farm Street. In neither accident was anybody injured. And I also searched for pedestrian accidents, and there is none in the last quarter century. So I question the need, even though, yes, the road is narrow, as most streets are in Dover. Should we build sidewalks on all the streets to avoid liability? I think that's ridiculous.
I agree.
I'm opposed to this proposition. I see no indication for it. I see no justification for spending money to even do a study. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Chris Campanella, 28 Cross Street. I live right across from the school, next to John. I have 2 kids in the school. I walk them to school every day, along with my neighbors. And I would say I don't feel safe on the street, but I'm not putting my kids on the bus to sit on it for 2 minutes to go across the street. I'm walking them every day. It's a special moment for me, and all we're asking, forget the accuracy or all the comments around how it's been presented. I think what's important is that we do a study. If you go to any neighboring town, go drive through Needham. They have speed bumps, they have flashing lights, they have sidewalks next to their schools. It's a school district. We've talked to Kevin McCabe, I've talked to the police chief, I've talked to Deb Reineman. They've all shown support, but there's no funds. So I think it's good if we do a study. I think, as John said, it should be more inclusive, the whole Cross Street, do an assessment, understand it, and then come back, and then we can understand the cost. That's all we're asking for, is an assessment. We're not asking to commit to building the sidewalk. Just do a study. Understand it. We're at risk. It's a school district. I don't know why there's so much debate about adding safety in a school district, a school street. Drive around. I would ask people to drive around.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Atwood. I live at 15 Hills Hollow. I think I might represent the one total person in town who both has a child in Chickering who then goes to Precious Beginnings. Every day at 2 o'clock, I show up at Chickering with my car to drive my child my guess is 200, 300 yards, because the 3 times we did try to walk, 2 of those times we were almost struck by a car. Both of those times were also because someone on the street had landscaping trucks right at the corner where cars would go around. So I was walking with my, at the time, 4-year-old holding my hand, and one of those times a car came so close to us I had to shove him to the ground to make sure he was out of the way of traffic. He has asked many times at school pickup, can we go directly to the library, can we walk? I just don't feel comfortable taking a kiddo in that zone of street when drivers are not always paying attention. Recognize that there might not be a big issue, right? I might be the one person experiencing that, but I can at least attest that there have been multiple times where I felt like my kid was not safe on the roads near the school in a way that just makes me wonder, like, why do we not have fully connected sidewalk to our elementary school? These are the children least likely to be able to look for their own safety concerns. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if not, I'm going to adjourn. Thank you very much for attending.